So the first thing I want to point out is this website, Go by Example, because Go by Example is a great website just to sort of like, oh yeah, how do I do that thing again? What is that one thing? So for instance, we've learned about variables, and you could come here and you could take a look at variables, and you are going to see in here, maybe, I'm taking a look, this would not be the way you'd want to do that, right? I don't recommend that. So that's one of the things I said, hey, Go has a couple of warts. There's a couple of different ways you could, declare, initialize, assign variables. And the two that I want you to do are the shorthand way when you're inside of a function. Always use a shorthand way. That is idiomatic Go. Idiomatic. Idiomatic, if you look for that, right, is this. And you can pause the video and you can read that definition. And here is the definition of idiom. And you can pause this video and read that definition. But when we talk about idiomatic Go, and this is like part of the thing where the language has a language all of its own to talk about the language. How's that for triple speak, right? But, just like any culture has, has its own language. Like if I was to say to you, hey, the waves are really big, I'm going to go get my gun, you'd be like, what are you talking about? I'm talking to the microphone, sorry, I need to look up to the camera. If I was to say, hey, the waves are really big, I'm going to go get my gun, you'd be like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Unless you're a surfer, in which case you'd know I was going to get my really big surfboard because the waves are really big. So every culture, has its own language that they use to talk about what they do in that culture. And it's the same way with programming. Programming has its own language. And even more narrowly defined, a more narrow subculture, the programming community of Go. So Go programming has its own language to talk about the language. And one of the words you'll come across when you're reading the docs, the spec, effective Go, is idiomatic. And so idioms are just patterns of speech, right? They're like things people say, hey, that's an idiom. First one that came to mind was like, there are many ways to skin a cat, or, quit beating a dead horse, which I don't know what backwater parts of Arkansas those phrases came from. Leroy, quit beating that horse. It's already dead, right? Like, those are idioms, like little sayings. And so idiomatic Go code is code that is, is written in the way you should write code for this language. That's idiomatic. These are the idioms we use. And so the shorthand notation, you should totally use that. And if you need zero value, you would do var a string. Those are the two ways I want you to think about it. The point being is there's this website, Go by Example, and you can use it as a reference to really quickly look up, how do I do that piece of code? Really good resource. The other thing I want to show you, because this is the preview video, what are we going to learn in this section, is I want to show you the preview. This is what we're going to learn in this section right here. So we're going to go over the fundamentals of the language. And I'm really liking just like jumping straight in and coding, because you could talk about theory all day. And theory is important because that really sort of gives you the foundation upon which you could build the house of your, program. But it's also funner just to get out there with some hammers, nails, and saws and wood and start cutting stuff apart and seeing how it all works and fits together. And so we're going to jump right in and look at some of the fundamentals of the language, what I think of as the fundamentals in terms of how do you actually do this stuff. So we'll look at slices, we'll look at loops, we'll look at maps, we'll look at a range. That's also just another type of a loop. Then we're going to look at structs, which are data structures for holding data. And then we're going to look at composition, which is how we could use structs to sort of compose a program. And that will allow us to do like, things which in other object-oriented languages we talk about as inheritance. We don't say that in Go. We don't say inheritance in Go. It's got a whole different way of looking at it. It's based upon types. And then we're going to look at conditional. How do we do conditional logic? So that's pretty much straightforward. And then we'll do a review. And I'm going to throw in challenges in each of these here for you. So the first video here is the preview. And that's what we just got done doing right now. And you learned about, Go by Example, which is another great resource. And so just a little bit of review of resources for you to use when you're learning and working with Go. Go by Example is one of them. I am a big fan of godoc.org. I just pretty much always go there to check out, documentation on packages, whether it's the standard library or a third-party package. And then you also have Effective Go. I don't want to close that one. Effective Go. Right? Effective power? No, I want Effective Go. There we go. You have Effective Go, and then you also have the Golang spec. the language spec. And so these are all, places you want to be visiting as you learn this language. All right, so let's get on with learning the fundamentals.